Hi, it's Andy Hoffman, Media Director at Miles Franklin with my weekly audio blog. I have no guest this week, so I'll be short and sweet with the week's topics. Again, I want to start with something that came out late last week because it's so important. The fact that there is now officially no debt ceiling in this country and never will be. Buried in last week's congressional deal, which I call the penultimate deal with the devil, they decided, or they put in the fact that any legislation that attempts to create a debt ceiling can be vetoed by the president and can only be overridden by a two-thirds majority in both the House and the Senate. These things will never happen because we will never have a two-thirds majority in either house. And as a result, it is now officially debt ceiling to infinity, which I have been warning of for some time now. To me, this is a final nail in the coffin, especially because Janet Yellen, who's Mrs. Dove, will be joining the Fed sometime in the coming months. Now, speaking of no tapering, as the money printing rolls on, the economic data this week was absolutely and utterly abysmal. And I can't emphasize enough that everything that came out this week, after the shutdown, the data was released after the shutdown, pertained to what was going on just before the actual shutdown, meaning in September. So no one could blame the shutdown for any of these things. We had an utterly abysmal September NFP payroll report, way below expectations, a new low for the labor participation rate. As I wrote just before it, why on earth people were expecting 185,000 jobs is beyond me. The number was 148. And again, the most poor quality imaginable of jobs. It was really, really a horrible report. That's the third in a row now. July, August, September were all terrible. And of course, the October report, which will come out in 2 weeks, will be, they're saying, down 400,000 because of the government shutdown. So there's going to be no even fake good NFP reports anytime soon. We also saw the Bloomberg Consumer Sentiment Index, an 8-month low. The University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Index, lowest level of 2013. The PMI manufacturing flash fell to 2009 levels, barely in expansionary range. And of course, today's durable good orders, when you take out X defense and X whatever you want to talk about, we're down again, meaning the country, the manufacturing firms are just not producing anything these days. Throw in what's going on in Europe, where their macro data fell to its lowest level in 3 months. And of course, Japan, happy day, they reported that inflation is now higher. The inflation rate is now higher than the 10-year Treasury yield. And so, of course, the market actually sold off in Japan. Japan is an accident waiting to happen. I mean, it is astonishing with such a small population how they built so much debt on a per capita basis. And, it's only a matter of time before they collapse under the weight of their debt. And, will they do it before Europe and the United States? I don't know, but it's going to happen. As for this deal, it's amazing when that whenever they do a deal like the fiscal cliff deal, they, all of a sudden the Congress goes quiet. They don't talk about it anymore. They celebrate for a week or two because the PPT is in there running the stock market up, and they don't talk about anything. And meanwhile, we have a December 13th deadline to create a budget, or as they call it now, a long-term spending plan. Well, December 13th is only about 6 weeks away now, or 7 weeks. There's the Thanksgiving holiday in there too, that takes a week out, and no talking at all. What's going to happen is this super committee, or whatever they're calling it now, is probably going to take a whole month off, and then with just a couple of weeks left, they'll start talking about it, and they'll do absolutely nothing. Again, we will have absolutely no budget. There'll be no spending control whatsoever from Congress, and we have no debt ceiling. So what do you think the result is going to be come January, when we are threatened with another government shutdown without a budget? Should be interesting. And if they do come up with anything, I'll bet the cuts that they come up with are no more than the fiscal cliff deal cuts of 50 or 60 billion dollars a year, chump change, when you're running a deficit of over $1 trillion a year. Of course, the trillion is only the amount they tell you about. It doesn't talk about the off-balance sheet things and the unfunded liabilities, of course. So no, don't worry about debt ceiling issues, but trust me, this budget thing is going to creep up a lot faster than people can imagine, and it could get ugly again. And I'm not talking about the stock market. The stock markets are being hyperinflated by the PPT. It really doesn't matter. I'm talking about there is going to be an interest rate scare again. And of course, have people noticed what the dollar index is doing? I mean, we're talking about countries like Greece and France falling apart right now, and yet the euro is surging against the dollar. The dollar index is down to 79 again and threatening to fall back to the mid 70s, which isn't too far from its all-time low in the low 70s. I mean, it's a pretty damning statement that the dollar could be falling at all against, pardon my French, crap like the yen and the euro. But the fact is, the world is getting nervous. Heck, there's news this week that the Saudi ruling family is angry at the United States and is threatening sanctions of some sort because they're unhappy with how we're treating the situations in Syria and Iran. Remember, the whole petrodollar is about the Saudis selling oil in dollars, and I mean that's an accident waiting to happen because I equate Saudi Arabia to apartheid South Africa, where a tiny minority is ruling a country where people don't agree with them, and at some point that tiny minority is going to be overrun. Meanwhile, the tiny minority is starting to disagree with the United States. This is a very, very big deal, and people need to keep watching. Again, as for the markets, I don't even call them markets anymore. To watch the Dow go up every day, no matter what happens, is truly amazing. I mean, we see what I've talked about Venezuela. It's the textbook case of a nation that literally is heading into hyperinflation now, and the market's up 350%. I've talked about what has happened. And again, that in real terms, people are not making money in the Venezuelan market. That's how bad inflation is starting to get over there. And of course, most people don't own stocks, which is the same thing now in the United States and Japan. So it's really just the bankers that are benefiting from this. As for what the Fed is doing, they are pumping up markets like I've never seen before. And that's why they fought so hard against gold and silver, because as you've seen in any of these hyperinflationary situations, the markets initially dramatically rise, but in the big picture, they start to lose in real terms in a major way. Weimar Germany being the perfect case where the stock market rose dramatically, but not as much as the cost of living, and not even close to as much as the prices of gold and silver in Reich terms, Reichsmarks. So this will eventually happen in the United States, where the Dow, no matter how much they profit, loses more in real terms than it is right now, and gold and silver will break out, of course, and be the big gainers in real terms, in real purchasing power terms. Gold and silver actually had a great week this week. I mean, unbelievable. I wrote today about the capping, exactly 2% on Tuesday and exactly 1% on Thursday, and just a series of nonstop using every tactic possible. But the fact is, gold did close above $13.50 this week, and it's only about $15 or so from where we were when they announced the no taper in September. Remember, Monday is a COMEX options expiration day, so the cartel has tried very hard to push gold and silver down, but they have not succeeded. And there's a lot of open interest out there, so I'm eager to see if any more will be taking delivery, given how low the COMEX registered stocks are. And then, of course, on Tuesday and Wednesday, you have the FOMC meeting, which is the complete guarantee no tapering. In fact, I don't even expect them to say much at all other than, yep, we're just doing what we're doing, and we're going to keep our mouths shut, because you know what happens when the Fed opens their mouth, they just put their foot in it. So anyway, so that's all there is for now. Relatively quiet week, but I will say one thing. Business at Miles Franklin has started to pick up significantly. We're seeing a lot more phone calls, a lot more orders after a very quiet summer. I think between the prices rising and people realizing that there is no debt ceiling anymore, that the government shutdown has just killed the credibility of the nation, and seeing all the buying around the world with the high premiums, etc., I think people are starting to realize that at these ridiculous prices, way below the cost of production for both metals, it's time to start thinking about protecting yourself. Because remember, once the game starts going and people start buying en masse, you may well find yourself left out and you won't be able to protect your assets. Well, that's it for now. I will talk to you next week.